friends. This is International Master Valeri Lilov, and welcome to my analysis on game number 6 of the World Championship match between Sergei Karjakin and Magnus Carlsen. The first 5 games were quite interesting, but I'd like to talk to you about game number 6 because I think that the match is going in a very specific direction, that I will try to give a prediction to what's going on and why are these guys playing the way they are, at least based on my own view. So let's talk about this game and see what happened. After the opening of e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop b5, black played a6, and then after knight f6, we have the usual line of the ruler pass. What white is trying to do here is pretty clear. He's supporting the center and is basically challenging black there. So you can realize the main goal is, of course, for white to take on c6 and then attack or even win the pawn on e5. That by no means suggests he's going to do it. Of course, black has plenty of ways to defend it, but this is what white attempts to do at first. Now, this is a main line and one of the most popular in ruler pass. What happened after that move is that black plays b5, surely challenging off this bishop from the long diagonal, and as the bishop goes back, black simply castles short. h3. Now, it was interesting because I got asked by one of my students, why does white get to play h3 here? Apparently g4 isn't the problem. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the ruler pass, it makes a lot of sense. But essentially, h3 is done just to prevent bishop g4 once c3 and d4 or similar moves take place. It is a kind of an unnecessary move, but essentially white doesn't have to worry about his light square bishop being taken unless black plays d6. Once black has the d6 and e5 protected, then he might actually want to look for a move of knight e5 as a possible threat. Until that point has happened, white doesn't have to worry about his light square bishop being exchanged, which actually is going to be a big thing considering that this is a so-called Spanish bishop, like being one of the most important pieces inside white's position. So anyway, black played bishop b7, d3, and then black does d5. Now this is a very aggressive variation, which in this particular case, nevertheless, didn't just bring anything to the table to black. The main idea of this move was to open up the position and even through a sacrifice of a certain material, let black to attack. Unfortunately, there's just not a whole lot of potential, so this just leads to simplifying the game and getting specific equality. I think d6 gives a lot more layers to the battle, and even though the position would have been close, it's probably a little more intense variation. The move d5 is led to edicts to the d5. I mean, again, I just want to show what happens after d6. I mean, essentially after d6, white could still do a3, knight d2, c3, and this variation, which already happened in one of the previous games. So we saw that line. I mean, white was already struggling a lot with the center, being unprotected. So I guess Karjakin probably made some improvements in his line. So that's why Carlsen did d5 in order to challenge and threaten the center before everything else happens. So it's an interesting way to go. So d5, and practically right after that move, white picked up to play edicts to the d5, knight x d5, and knight x d5. At first sight, we get to ask ourselves the question, why did this really happen? Why does black give away a pawn? But then you see that the pawn falls, yet black gets quite a bit of development and actually strong initiative behind it. So the moment white played knight x d5, black did knight d4, thereby getting 2 strong knights and the potential challenge versus white's king. The one thing Karjakin exploited very well in the previous games, though, was the absence of threats by Carlsen. In most of the games where Carlsen got an advantageous position, he didn't really have that much pressure or threats. So the resulting attack never really paid off that well. And that's something interesting because this match is going to definitely go into the books, to come about how to defend and when an attack is successful or not. So essentially, we could see that black, just despite his strong attempt, he simply doesn't have enough in this case. So after knight to d4, white played knight to c4, knight to c3, and actually after knight to c3, black played knight b4. So now you understand white is going to have to hold a little bit of black's pieces and the tension black is going to create. Unfortunately, to black, this isn't going to be anything too, like scary. At least for a while, there's just nothing much to happen. White played bishop to f4. As I said before, the absence of threats is the main reason why this may not work. I'm not saying this was never going to work or this is going to be a bad idea for for white. I mean, not at all. It's just there's a challenge, and that challenge could make the problems, to white. So let's take a look and see what happened next. After the move of bishop to f4 as it went, let's take a look and see how did the game go next. After that, of course, black plays knight takes to the b3, and in that particular case, white did 8x to the b3. So it was fairly interesting. Exchange, recapture, and then pawn to the c5. As we can see, black is definitely applying a little tension and extra opportunities around the center. It's a good-looking move. So that was a bit of a novelty, I have to say, but it's interesting. So what is going on after c5? Well, apparently, for one, black is actually applying quite a bit of tension around the center, so this makes sense. Of course, that doesn't go without saying that, this wouldn't continue. And then again, keep in mind, black is definitely intending to carry on and continue with his challenge, to continue with his pressure. So what is white supposed to do about that? How is he going to respond this whole, scenario out there? It's a good question. It really is. Let's talk about that. After c5, white played knight e4. And this was a really, really good move. What was this whole thing all about? Why does white play this? The reason why this actually gets played is because white simply centralizes quite a bit of his pieces on very strong, very good positions. And that gives him a lot of opportunities. This is a very powerful idea. Centralizing is a great way to go because whenever you get to centralize your pieces, you can have a lot of potential to add. And white felt that he had quite a bit of potential with his pieces already. And so let's just see if black could break that so he can further achieve any significant threats. And that's not so easy, Now, seeing that, essentially black realized this is not going to happen too easily. So, next move, he played with f6. Okay, apparently, he needs to try and fight these pieces. Black just cannot allow white to stand forth and keep those pieces ready. So black does his best in order to push back the knight and do it well. So f6, knight f3, and f5. If black played the move of f5 immediately, I think it would have been good, but then white would have stand with that knight on e5, that in one way or another, this knight just creates a little bit of tension against black. Like seeing the knight there, standing so close to the black position and everything. You realize that soon after white moves his knight to d2, there's just not going to be a whole lot going on. The knight of white is pretty strong. The rest of the pieces, like the bishop and the rook, are good. Even if black attempts this type of attack after g3, for example, queen takes to b2, you realize white can very effectively deliver knight e to c4. And the counter is pretty strong. If b takes to the c, white has rook takes d7 coming in. If on the other hand he plays queen f6, white is definitely going for knight a5. So, it's just black stands better, but once again he has nothing as opposed to white, who is definitely able to put pressure and create these little challenges versus black's position. Very interesting way to prove how white can attack and defy the game. So, What happened a little later is that black played f6, and then he actually did f5 in an attempt to basically deal with this problem. He wanted to drive away essentially this the knight of white, so that once he can drive it away, he can utilize his bishops and create more threats. But this is just a hope, and it's important to understand that there's nothing more to going for it than just, okay, I have the hope, let's break through. So after that last move, white simply played with knight g5. Bishop takes g5, knight takes g5, h6, and knight e6. This is the moment where we realize that the whole pressure, or whatever it is that basically black attempted, is likely not going to work at all because of white's super active pieces. It's like that knight on e6 already has invaded inside black's position. So we see this as more than enough to do the things the way white needs to do them. Knight e6, queen d5, and f3. Rook f e8 and rook e5. I think this is a very lovely move, by the way. You just get to see why. This is a strong knight on e5, backed up by knight on e6, backed up by a strong rook on e5. I mean, think about this. Who is attacking right now? Seriously, who is attacking? Is it white or is it black? I can definitely tell you one thing. I don't think it is black. So it's very special, but it is white actually who creates and does and delivers all these type of threats and different attacks. So it was great. After that last move, rook e5, black played this, and then white continued with c3. The best way to deal with any attacks by the opponent is when you drive away his important pieces. So what you realize is that, just black is definitely being a bit more backward. He has more things to worry, and it all looks quite good. c3, rook takes d6, rook takes d6, c takes to the b4, and now white definitely gets the open line available. So it's pretty good. It really looks great. Rook c1, rook c8, rook takes to c8, the queen takes to the c8, and this very moment, basically white played queen e1, which was excellent. It was a great setup. The opposite colored bishop are supposed to provide black with an attack, but again, how is he going to really coordinate the queen and the bishop? There is no way to achieve this, not in any way. So white can invade black's territory by moving the queen instantly into on the e7, and there's so much more. This is just the beginning. Apparently, it was a much more successful variation, and white he definitely does everything great. Well, I gotta say, this felt great. And so, okay, after that last move, black does queen d7, king h2, pawn to a5, queen e3, and queen b6. The couple of exchanges certainly cannot give white an advantage, but it certainly doesn't give black any advantage either. And I like to say the game just gets equal. So I think that white's approach of dealing with black's initiative was quite good in this game. And even though it wasn't nothing super special or very exciting, I feel like this game illustrates once again Karjakin's defensive skills and his strategy. To my mind, the way he's playing is very good for a player like Carlsen. See, there's this old saying that people don't like being played the way they do. See, Carlsen's strategy usually involves like a lot of positional maneuvering until the opponent tries to break through, and then he weakens his position. Karjakin does quite the same thing, and he's using it against Carlsen. He kind of waits and builds up a strong position so that basically he kind of lets Carlsen start first. And, he can't break it that easily. He can't break that defense. It's interesting because Carlsen is that kind of player, and he's being played with the same sort of strategy. So as you can see, both players try to avoid risks and save their strength. Apparently they try as much as they can, but they don't push the positions, and that will be probably it will happen to be until the very last games of the match. There are 12 games. We've passed the first half, first 6, so you're probably going to see some really feisty games in the last half of the match, especially if somebody wins, because sooner or later somebody is just going to crack. So when that happens, there will be some really bloody fight going on. But Karjakin's preparation for this match and the strategy he's taking is really, really good. He is obviously weaker than Carlsen in terms of level, but I believe he's more prepared than Carlsen. And that gives him some solid advantage. So we still have to wait and see who wins first. I believe the one who wins first is most likely going to win the match. But let's take a look, and tomorrow we're gonna actually witness the next game and the time where Carlsen is white, and probably this is the time where he's gonna likely try to push for a win, being the first game of the second half of this match. Thank you very much for following it up, and I'll speak to you tomorrow with my comments on the next 7th game of the World Championship match 2016.
Master Damian Lemos, first of all, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to receive more free chess videos from us, you can just click the subscribe button below. I would also highly recommend signing up for my free mail course, the 10 Grandmaster Secrets to Dominate Chess. During this exclusive course from onlinechesslessons.net, I'll share with you my own Grandmaster shortcuts to effective attacking, defending, and growth hacks to improving your chess without complicated books or memorization. So sign up by clicking the sidebar on the right, and I know you won't be disappointed. Once more, this is Damian for onlinechesslessons.net, and I'll see you in my videos. Thank you.